Janet Acoma was ecstatic. The sky had cleared and finally she would be able to get back to her job, that of searching for exoplanets around distant stars. Unlike telescopes in space, Janet was dependent on the weather here on good old Mother Earth, and of her 9 allotted days with the SAO telescope outside of Johannesburg, 5 had already been scuttled because of overcast weather. But not tonight. Tonight, the air was crisp and clear, giving her a stunning view of the South African Karoo during the short drive up to the observatory. 5 hours later, after the sun had set, Janet was seated at a desk in a small room off the main part of the dome. Earlier, she'd fired up the camera, and now it was cooled down to its minus 50 degrees Celsius operating temperature. She already had the coordinates programmed into the aiming computer, and with a press of a button, the huge telescope swung on target. The image Janet saw on the screen was not what one would expect. Instead of spectacularly colored space scenes of nebula and stars with astral crosses projecting from them, Janet saw a white background with black dots of various sizes. This was her neighborhood, and from this image she could detect even the slightest change in luminosity for all the objects in her narrow field of view. And it was because of this familiarity that Janet was able to notice the anomaly within seconds of glancing at the screen. It was a star that shouldn't be there. It was a simple process for her to pull out past images of this region of space and then do a quick flip back and forth. One moment the star wasn't there. The next it was. Next she followed procedure, checking for dirt or dust on the camera lens. Nothing there. Besides, dust doesn't have a spectrum, and in a way, neither did this strange new object. Janet gawked at the image on another screen. When isolated, the spectrum for this particular star was a single line, spiking up from the baseline almost like a cosmological middle finger to the confused astronomer. The line consisted of a single element, and not the full range of a normal spectrum. Janet leaned in closer to the screen, not believing what she was seeing. The element was xenon, and only xenon. That was impossible. No star was comprised exclusively of xenon. Not even close. In fact, there were no stars made up of only one element. Stars were made of a lot of stuff, and they all gave off a different spectral band. This was a find for the record books, and Janet Acoma was not opposed to being in the record books. She immediately cataloged the find and attached all the data she had, before emailing the file to herself and several of her colleagues around the world. The timestamp would make her first, but now she needed confirmation. Janet Acoma had discovered a new type of star, an Acoma star, as she began calling it. As it turned out, Janet had indeed discovered a strange new object in the heavens, but as the days went by, and other telescopes, both on Earth and in space, focused on the mysterious object, something remarkable was discovered. The object wasn't a single object, but was instead made of hundreds of smaller lights, and not only that, but their blue shift showed the objects were moving toward Earth. Red shift would have signified they were moving away. But the blue shift was conclusive, which made the next part of the discovery even more ominous. The objects were decelerating. More days passed as the news circulated around the world. Coming first from the sighting of a potential new class of star, the information wasn't restricted. Millions of people learned of the discovery. However, as more data came in, governments began to clamp down on the release of new information. Natural objects in space don't decelerate, and especially not in a uniform manner. Because she had started the brouhaha, Janet was invited to Washington, D.C., to attend a private conference held at the White House. Why there, Janet could only speculate. She was Spanish, and had made the discovery using a European-sponsored telescope. Even so, the Americans had apparently taken over the project, which made Janet fear this had something to do with the military. The meeting was held in a conference room Janet was sure few people in the world even knew existed, far beneath the white edifice of the most famous building on the planet. Janet recognized several of the people in the room from TV and the internet, although she'd never met any of them in person. Overall, it was pretty intimidating. And then President Ron Simmons approached her. "Ms. Acoma, I am so glad to finally meet you." His manner was warm and polished, just as one would expect from a career politician. "It's an honor to meet the person who set all this in motion." Janet smiled politely. "Thank you, Mr. President, although, at the moment, I'm at a loss as to what has been set in motion." The president's jovial expression vanished, replaced by one of utmost seriousness. "I'm afraid you're going to be exposed to some rather startling revelations, Ms. Acoma. Some people didn't want you in attendance. I insisted, if for no other reason than to get an honest, unbiased opinion. So please don't hesitate to speak. I want to hear what you have to say." And then he was gone, off to assume his position at the head of the table. The lights dimmed and a large screen lit up on the wall. A man Janet knew to be the head of NASA stood, pointing at the image on the monitor. So far, Nathan Shuloff said, we've counted 5,016 individual objects. We estimate there are more, just hidden behind the glare of the other ships. Janet's stomach tightened at the mention of the word ships. There was talk around the world that these objects were starships of some kind, and all part of an invasion force heading toward Earth. The tabloids and the internet were having a field day with this conspiracy theory. Janet thought, perhaps this is not a theory. Furthermore, considering that at the time Ms. Acoma first detected the object, the NASA director gave her a pleasant nod, causing Janet's face to burn from embarrassment. It was estimated the objects were traveling at about 98% the speed of light. Since then, that has dropped to 81, and still dropping. At the rate of deceleration, the ships should reach zero relative velocity just as they reach Earth, and they should be here in 128 days. That was it, Janet thought. The conspiracy theory was now fact. A fleet of alien spaceships was headed for Earth. The NASA director continued. At this rate of deceleration, the occupants of these vessels should be experiencing close to 1g gravity, meaning they would be accustomed to Earth-like gravity. Where did they come from? Asked a stark-looking older woman in a stylish pantsuit. Shuloff shook his head. Impossible to tell. But the president did want me to fill everyone in on the basic physics of the starships. We've come to the conclusion that these vessels have been employing a scientific principle known as time dilation to make the journey from their home world. Simply put, that means that as an object gets closer to the speed of light, time aboard the vessel slows down. This effect doesn't begin to manifest to any noticeable degree until you get around 90% of the speed of light. It's our belief that the starships first accelerated to 99% the speed of light before coasting for an unknown amount of time. Then, almost precisely at the time Ms. Acoma had her camera focused on that part of the sky, they flipped their ships around and began to decelerate. What we are seeing is the exhaust from xenon-powered ion propulsion engines. A man spoke up along the table. Even at 99% of the speed of light, it would still take hundreds or thousands of years to get here. How could they have built machines that could operate for that long? Shuloff gave a sly smirk. That's because aboard the ships, time came to a virtual standstill. Not only did the occupants stop aging, but so did all the equipment and materials it took to make the ships. Not only that, it also reduced the amount of food and water required to make such a long trip. It's quite remarkable. But it isn't news to us. We've known about time dilation since Einstein. In reality, it's a simple way of opening the stars to the human race, although it's a one-way trip. What do you mean? The same man asked. It means that while only a few years may pass aboard the starship, thousands of years will have passed on the homeworld. You wouldn't want to make a round trip and return to a world that would consider you like a Roman peasant from the year 200 BC in the world of today. No. Someone making such a journey could never return home. There was only the briefest moment of silence before the president spoke. Okay, Nathan, why are they coming here? He looked around the table. You heard all the arguments. What's your opinion? The smug, collegiate tone of the scientist changed and his eyes narrowed. I am not a soldier. In fact, I abhor war. But in my opinion, one does not show up at your doorstep with an army unless you mean to cause harm. This is not a scientific expedition, nor is it a, hello, how are you, kind of mission. I believe this to be an invasion force. Maybe even a colonization. Janet was shocked, although she seemed to be the only one in the room to feel that way. Apparently, all the others had been thinking the same as Dr. Shuloff. Admiral Jennings, the president said, turning to a slender man in a sharp-looking blue Navy uniform. What's your assessment of the situation? Your people have been looking at scenarios for a few days now. Any conclusions? Sir, it's really too early to make any definitive calls, so this is all speculation, all except for the fact that these aliens were able to build a fleet of 5,000 ships that could make the journey to Earth. That says something about their capabilities. We certainly couldn't do that. Although Dr. Shuloff has told me that in 10 to 20 years, we could have ion drives that could power a spaceship to the speeds necessary for time dilation, but not 5,000 of them. And others have analyzed the data that suggests that each ship has a gross tonnage of somewhere around 4 million. These ships are massive, probably 5 miles long or more, and there are 5,000 of them. The aliens could be bringing a conquering force of millions, and once they get here they will control the high ground of space. We don't have any means of countering such an attack. What about nukes on rockets? Someone at the table asked. The admiral grinned. Sure, we could fire a nuke at the invaders at about 15,000 miles per hour and at a range of 6,000 miles, but even our ships in space travel at that speed, and they'd see the missile coming soon enough to move out of the way. Then in space, a nuclear detonation is quite different than it is on Earth. It's mainly in radiation and electromagnetic pulse. A ship shielded for an EMP, which the aliens' ships would have to be after traveling through space for so long, would be ineffectual. I'm afraid the only chance we would have against the invaders is if they came down to Earth and fought us straight up on the battlefield. But even then, we don't have any idea what kind of weapons they could deploy against us. You sound like there's no hope, Admiral, said Nancy Reynolds, the American Secretary of State. Admiral Jennings grimaced. I'm not one to back down from a fight, but I am a realist. This is an enemy like we've never faced before, or at least we think it is. At this point, we know nothing of them. But one thing I think Dr. Shuloff mentioned. The aliens are coming to Earth for a reason. They're decelerating at a rate that would suggest our gravity is acceptable to them, and I'm sure they've analyzed our atmosphere. They seem to think Earth might be just right for their invasion plans, and in the 128 days before they get here, we don't have time to develop the technology, nor to deploy such technology as it would take to repel this invasion. There were murmurs around the table before the president called for order. All right, he said. We need to look at alternatives. If we can't fight them, what do we do? Janet was surprised to find that she'd raised her hand. It was out of impulse, but it was too late to pull it back down. The president was looking at her. Yes, Ms. Acoma, please speak. Janet cleared her throat. Couldn't we just welcome them to Earth? Why do we have to always assume they're coming to cause us harm? The president smiled. It was a condescending smile. We may actually end up doing that, Ms. Acoma. But there is the simple fact that they are coming with 5,000 starships. That speaks of a major commitment on their part, and that they are coming here to stay. Other experts have estimated the fuel requirements for first accelerating to the speed of light and then decelerating. It's their belief that the aliens will not have enough fuel to leave once they get here. That means several million aliens are coming here to live. Will they come in peace? Will they fully integrate into human society? And how will we react to their arrival? He looked again to Janet. Your suggestion is noted and will be the approach we take initially. But I need to think about the people of the Earth before I consider the welfare of the aliens. How do I keep humanity from being destroyed? And do I wait until they get here to decide how? The Secretary of State spoke up again. We could always surrender. Now an even louder murmur rose around the table. Nancy Reynolds raised her hand for quiet. Please hear me out. If the aliens arrive and we simply invite them in, they might feel as though they have a license to take what they want. However, if we surrender, then we become their responsibility. Just think, when we take prisoners of war, we must house them, feed them, and give them medical care. If we surrender as a race, we become the responsibility of the aliens. Basically, we become their wards, and with our systems already in place, it would be easier just to let us continue doing what we've been doing. That's assuming they would even care about our welfare, said another military officer at the table, this one from the Army. Well, we can't fight them, Reynolds said. And of course they may not accept our surrender, in which case, what have we lost? I believe that at this time we need information. We know nothing of these aliens, nothing with which to even start a dialogue, and as the president has mentioned, we have a responsibility to protect the human race, along with all the infrastructure on the planet. Let's not give the aliens any reason to fight us, and perhaps give them a reason to take care of us, at least until we know the enemy a little better. General, I'm a negotiator. That's what I do for a living. Give me an opportunity to negotiate. All eyes turned to the president. He was pensive, his forehead furrowed. Surrender? That's your solution. A beginning solution, Mr. President. And at this point, what do we have to lose? Chief Banner Nisalian Max grimaced, looking around at the assembled council members in the conference room. For several days, the Xenaxians around him had been in intense study and discussion about what could be done about this completely unexpected turn of events. This meeting was where conclusions would be reached and plans put into action. Nisalian looked to his head counselor. The chief had already seen the preliminary report. Now, to find out how the others will react. Counselor Sands, please relate your thoughts and observations for the gathered council. Sands took a deep breath, and then began. We are currently 128 Earth days from the planet. Since we will be making our new home on the planet Earth, I believe it best if we all start referring to days in Earth terms. Since we have grown closer to the planet, we have been picking up literally thousands of broadcasts and have learned far more about the humans than we could have ever imagined. They have extensive histories that have given us valuable insights we all wish we had long before this moment. For background, When first it was discovered that our star of Canis would be struck by a rogue black hole, we only had so much time to plan for the survival of our species, 700 years to be precise. At that time, Xanax began to devote all our time and energy to developing the fleet we now find ourselves part of. Unfortunately, that condemned billions of our brethren to certain death. But we accepted that, knowing that at least 500 million would survive long enough to begin a new civilization on a new world. We sent out probes which after 400 years returned their findings. Out of a possible 98 target planets, only 5 came back as real possibilities. With Earth being the closest and the best match for Semen-4, our homeworld, that was only 51 years before the fleet launched. Now we are here, and have found some startling, even unbelievable news. As you recall, when the probe returned the data about Earth, it was found the native population was less than 1 billion. Also, the humans did not have electricity, they barely had the use of ballistic weapons, and they rode on 4-legged steeds. Considering that only 400 years have passed since that first survey, we looked at our own history and timeline and figured the humans would not have made much progress in those years. Besides, even extrapolating from their own history, and using their timelines, the difference in technology and society between the year 1200 and the year 1600 was not that significant. Why would we assume then that this level of progress would be any different between the years of 1600 and 2000? But now we have it. According to their own broadcasts, the human population has grown to over 8 billion. The natives have electricity, combustible fuel, rudimentary space travel, and most importantly, atmospheric readings show they have developed nuclear power. And not only that, but they have detonated bombs in the atmosphere, leaving residual effects. But I believe the most disturbing of all, the broadcasts we have viewed speak of constant war between elements of the human race, and war at a very refined level. My team and I have come to the conclusion that humanity's rapid evolution in technology has been a direct result of their propensity for war. The weapons and strategies of war are employed everywhere in their society, even to their business practices where they often speak of going in for the kill when deals are made. The human race thrives on war, and it is evident everywhere one looks. Are we prepared for such a confrontation? A council member asked, voicing the concerns of the others. Sands shook his head. No, we are not. Recall, we were expecting to face a resistance made up of fighters on horseback using spears, arrows and swords. That is why we only brought a military force of 25,000. With our mechanized technology and modern weapons, we could easily subdue any hostile force sent against us, and as for the millions of us in cryosleep, they are teachers, merchants, engineers and more. They are not fighters by any stretch of the imagination. And it is obvious, our small military force would be no match for the human warriors. Then what are we to do? Another Xanaxian council member asked. We have depleted our fuel, and the millions of our compatriots cannot stay in cryosleep forever. We have nowhere else to go. Earth was our only option, our only hope. Nisalian cleared his throat to get the attention of the council. It is obvious we have no other choice than to make landfall on Earth. But as we do, we must get the humans to accept us. As we can see from their broadcasts, the humans are very suspicious of outsiders. We have seen hundreds of videos showing fictionalized accounts of such encounters, and with the size of our migration fleet, they will surely see us as invaders. Then what shall we do? One Xanaxian spoke, but Nisalian saw the question on the faces of all the council. Nisalian had been thinking about this very question since the moment he'd seen the preliminary report. He had an idea, one he actually took from the human videos. We must surrender to the humans, Nisalian announced. Surrender, said a council member, but we are not at war. I do not think it will matter. If we take examples from the humans' own treatment of prisoners, they will be obligated to care for us, provide housing, food and medical care. We will become their responsibility. It is their practice to assign designated living areas, large enough even for our sleeping brothers and sisters. Of course, this will only be temporary. Once the humans learn that we mean no harm, they will accept us as guests, not prisoners. But 500 million of us, said Councilmember Vornis, and we plan to multiply. Is there enough quality land for us and the humans? Even with the small population we were expecting to find, we had already decided that the planet wouldn't be large enough for both of us. I say we deal with that at a later time, Nisalian said. For the moment I have 500 million people to worry about, and if we appear too aggressive to the humans we could find ourselves adrift in space and with no home, no future. I say we surrender to the humans at the first opportunity and let the situation develop from there. The council voted, and it was decided. The Xanaxians would surrender to the humans of Earth. The first official meeting of human and alien took place aboard a Xanaxian starship in high Earth orbit. There had been tentative conversations but nothing substantial. Taking Janet's advice, the governments of the world welcomed the aliens without speaking too harshly to them. The aliens did the same to the humans. But no matter how encouraging it was from the start, President Simmons still saw a massive fleet of 5,000 ships encircling the planet. Earth was in a state of panic, just waiting for the hammer to fall. Simmons was determined not to let the hammer cause any damage when it did. The two leaders approached each other in a formal meeting room aboard the 5-mile-long oblong-shaped starship. To the president, it seemed dirty and half-ass, and not a gleaming example of superior alien technology. There was a spinning ring that provided simulated gravity, something Simmons was sure NASA could build if they had the money. The alien leader was named Nisalian Max, which the president thought was a pretty cool name. He wondered if Ron Simmons sounded exotic to the alien as his name did to the human. The beings approached each other, and when they were only 5 feet apart, they both spoke at once, automated translators echoing their words throughout the chamber. "We surrender." Eyes blinked and mouths fell open. "What did you say?" They again said in unison. "I said we surrender," Simmons announced. "But you cannot surrender to us. We surrender. To you." Simmons shook his head. "No, I distinctly remember saying I surrender first." "You are mistaken." "Let us review the recordings to see who said it first," said Nisalian. The president shook his head. "It doesn't matter. Even if you said it first, we don't accept your surrender. We surrender. To you." "Why do you want to do this?" Nisalian asked. "Why do you want to surrender?" "To us," Simmons echoed. And the situation continued like this for several minutes before the meeting broke up, and the senior representatives of both groups retired to an antechamber to hash things out in a more intimate space. When the truth came out, both sides were embarrassed and humiliated. "So, what do we do now?" the president asked. Nisalian answered with a very human-like shake of his head. "I do not know. We cannot continue, we are out of fuel. And it is apparent, the planet Earth cannot accommodate 2 dominant species. The overcrowding is significant even now. What will it be like in 200 years as my people multiply?" Janet Acoma was surprised to see herself chosen to accompany the president to the alien spaceship. But again, the president said it was a reward, saying she deserved to be one of the first humans to step foot aboard an alien starship. She now raised her hand again. Both leaders looked at her, frowning. "Yes, Janet, please speak your mind," President Simmons told her. "I agree that the planet Earth isn't big enough for both of us. But don't the Xanaxians have alternatives? You sent probes to dozens of planets. Earth couldn't have been your only option." "That is correct," the alien Nisalian answered. Janet nearly fainted when the alien creature addressed her. "But that is not the issue. The issue is our fuel supplies. We have exhausted them." "And you use an isotope of xenon gas, do you not?" "That is true, if the translation is correct." "Well, we have xenon, and if not that gas, then there are others that can be used in ion engines. Why don't we make you enough to replenish your supply? Do these other worlds you've surveyed have intelligent life?" "Some do, some do not," Nisalian answered. "In fact, the nearest one to Earth has only primitive species." He smiled. "And nothing that could evolve to modern beings in only 400 years. Could you produce enough fuel for all our ships?" Janet nodded, looking at the president. "I'm pretty sure we could." Simmons nodded. "And even if we do, there may be an opportunity for some Xanaxians to remain on Earth, while a small number of human volunteers go with you to the new world. Would that be something you would agree to?" Nisalian nodded emphatically. "We would welcome that exchange. We Xanaxians have never had contact with alien species before. Until it was discovered that our world was about to end, we weren't much more advanced than you are now, but when our entire race focused on a single cause, we were able to work miracles. And now, the humans are the first alien species we have ever encountered. And the Xanaxians are our first as well," said President Simmons. He smiled warmly to Janet. "Then I believe we have worked out a solution. And Ms. Acoma, do I sense you would like to volunteer for the exchange program, even knowing it will be a one-way trip?" "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Mr. President. I only have one life to live. I might as well live it traveling the stars, boldly going where no woman has gone before." Nisalian frowned when the president and Janet busted out laughing. Obviously, he hadn't gotten around to watching old Star Trek reruns on the video broadcasts. This has been an original story by sci-fi novelist T.R. Harris. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel and hit the like button. And be sure to check out all of his 70-plus sci-fi novels on Amazon. They're a lot of fun. Thanks for watching.